Welcome to episode 149 of the Grip Strip Podcast, the Happy Holidays Football and F1 edition of the Grip Strip Podcast. My name is Philip Matthew. I'm your host, and my co-host, who just got off of a race literally a few seconds ago. We have to get our open here. We have to go and introduce him properly. There's more meaning to the open now for my co-host because of what the news of today. He's a computer genius, an iRacing Indy 500 champion, a gentleman and a scholar, Jacksonville Jaguars fan, Joshua Fine. What's going on, man?
Hey, sorry, no, my audio there was messed up on the recording, or on the video recording, but we're good. No, but I'm doing great, Phil. Just got off of a iRacing race. Connor Daly was racing and put on and Tony Kanaan as well, putting on a show for the fans, because there's been some recent news here today that IndyCar will no longer be officially sanctioned on iRacing, and they have signed an exclusive rights deal with Motorsport Games, a company that is going out of business, and their stock is doing very poorly if it's even listed on the stock market anymore. So, that company had a deal with, and they have the source code for rFactor 2, but they had a lot of problems, and it seems like somehow they still have some existence, and IndyCar apparently is going through with this deal for 2023 to produce a exclusive console game for IndyCar only game. But that's how they're going, and a lot of iRacing fans, IndyCar fans are not happy about this because iRacing, is a huge platform for IndyCar racing in terms of streaming numbers. They're number 10, in sports games on Twitch and everything, and streaming, which we just streamed with Connor Daly, and Connor was on his stream as well. But yeah, just really, really disappointing news. And of course, you said I'm an Indy 500 champion right now on iRacing, and as of now, there will no longer be an official Indy 500 on iRacing, so which is very disappointing to hear. So, very, very unfortunate news, and we'll have to deal with the fallout of it and see what happens in the coming days. If they fix something or whatever, but that's the news as of now, and just disappointed to hear it, but we'll deal with it and move on.
Yeah, absolutely. We're gonna go and dive into it to open the show here a little more. The news of the day that broke on social media, and then the likes of Marshall Pruitt put it out there, and I'm sure David Malsher went and also made a post. I would think, I'm trying to check on motorsport.com to confirm, but no, that was a day ago. So those are a day ago, but we're going to get into that. Oh yeah, Neil Yanni. Oh, okay. So that's news. We'll go into something that we're going to talk about later. So we'll talk about iRacing and IndyCar. We'll talk about Week 15, where the Jaguars had a great comeback against the Cowgirls. The Niners on Thursday night beat Seattle, won the NFC West, and they'll be playing the Washington Redskin General Commanders on Saturday afternoon. Jaguars, you guys are playing the Jets tomorrow, which we're doing this on Wednesday instead of Monday. So we'll talk about all that. Jacksonville's in the race, actually, for the division.
They're going to get it.
So they have a good chance to win it the way that Trevor Lawrence is playing right now. We'll get into last week's results, big results in the playoffs. We are going to do our F1 season recap today. And then we'll get into the roundup, which there's now more news from Porsche's 963 GTB lineup for Penske. We'll get into some of the NASCAR tidbits that have come about here in the last few days. Some driver movement. They're in Erebus Racing in supercars and have a new sponsor. So we'll get into that. The women F1 Academy teams for the young women have been announced. They're all familiar teams, and if you're familiar with F2 and F3, IMSA We'll get into some of the news with some of the privateers, some of the announcements for GTD and LMP3 for Rolex and beyond. And then WRC Ford has made their announcements for their drivers, at least for the one for the full season or a couple for the full season and some that may be coming along later on. Josh will then get more into the sim game with the sim side with the sim segment. Then we'll close the deal and we'll take some time off for the holidays. So yeah, the news of the day, as Josh already mentioned, the licensing agreement's going to end here in, 10 days. And meaning that what Josh did, as you said, will not exist anymore. I guess you'll have the US 500. And so that'll... I forget, one of the guys I follow on Twitter is like, yeah, we're going to do a US 500 and I'll make sure that there's a big wreck before the start of the race. So that which is entirely possible based on the stream I just saw. So that Josh was involved with, but it blew up this morning, and they're not going to be able to utilize. You can't stream, iRacing. You're not permitted to broadcast races with those cars. So I guess you can run, or you can't run the Indianapolis Motor Speedway with the IR18. So that means the DW12. But okay, so yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on there. You're the guy in terms of it. You have the big one, Josh, and I'll give you the floor to kind of, after what we just saw there. I was watching the stream trying to be like a pseudo spotter. I don't think it really mattered. There was like a 3-second or 5-second delay, so I would have been like Brett Griffin in terms of spotting for Josh there. But what were your thoughts when you heard about it earlier today, and how are you feeling now after getting to race an Indy 500 champion and one of the more popular drivers in the IndyCar series in Connor Daly?
So I mean, it's disappointing to see the news that we're talking about, and to put it into context, for people that don't know, I guess what happened is on iRacing, they have a license with each racing series that they have content for. They have a license with NASCAR, IndyCar, of course, which we'll talk about in a second, and other racing series. They have a deal with F1 and Mercedes to license the Mercedes Formula One car in iRacing and race on the official F1 tracks. Although I don't think it's not officially sanctioned by F1, but they have the deal with Mercedes, and other series they got to deal with IMSA and everything, and it goes to the point where iRacing, they have officially sanctioned series where it's licensed to the actual real life series. So there's a NASCAR sponsored series, there's an IndyCar sponsored series, et cetera, and IndyCar, their license expires on December 31, 2022, and they have chosen to go in a different direction with their license for iRacing. They are not renewing it in the current fashion that they have had, where they have an official iRacing series, an iRacing Indy 500 series, or special event on iRacing, and they instead will have an exclusive deal with Motorsport Games going forward in 2023 to produce, I think, console and PC exclusive IndyCar games on there. So that's the deal going forward, and here we are. And so what does that all mean? Well, the license expires as said, on December 31, 2022. IndyCar has signed an exclusive license with another developer that goes into effect on January 1, 2023. We are still working on finalizing a new license with IndyCar. It is clear there will be some notable changes to the way we are able to present IndyCar racing on iRacing. Most significantly, we will no longer be able to run an official IndyCar branded series, and there will not be an iRacing Indy 500. You will also see the removal of the IndyCar series logo from our sites. We plan to continue to support the Dallara race cars, IR18, DW12, and Dallara IR05. There'll be no changes, unlimited use in racing in regards to the non-IndyCar series at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for other series, NASCAR, IMSA, etc. Until the new license agreement is finalized, we won't know all the details, so there may be further changes. and that's the official post from Greg West, the IndyCar moderator, content guy for iRacing, and I think in iRacing in general, not just IndyCar, but he is one of the main guys for the iRacing stuff on IndyCar. And so, yeah, basically what's happened now is they will no longer be able to hold, officially, have Indy 500 attached, as a sanctioned series on a race on iRacing, and it will, have nothing to do with the IndyCar series whatsoever. Currently, or before this week, before the recent update for 2023, it would say NTT IndyCar Series, IndyCar Oval Fixed, or IndyCar Open Series, and now it just says U.S. Open Wheel Class B, U.S. Open Wheel Class C, Fixed Oval. So that's what it's looking like right now on iRacing, and of course, no iRacing Indy 500, and I raced in that, of course, the past 2 years. The first year crashed out, second year finished fifth in the fixed edition, and then won in the open setup edition, of course, which I've talked about many times, and Phil has referenced me as the Indy 500 champion ever since then, and will continue to do so now and forever, especially now that there will be no more official one. And there's a lot of controversy here because of that, and not only that, but they will no longer have iRacing broadcasts that feature IndyCars on officially licensed tracks for IndyCar. So basically, like any current running IndyCar track, Gateway, Iowa, Long Beach, etc., Road America, is there will no longer be any official broadcasts or unofficial broadcasts allowed to take place with the IndyCar on those racetracks, and so that really hurts the participation of private leagues that use broadcasts to broadcast their races, to have their own fans, etc., and really does a disservice to the community. And then furthermore, I think it's even going to extend to private groups not holding or being able to hold their own version of the Indy 500 if they wanted to. I think it's extending out to that, where they can't do a 500-mile race on Indianapolis Motor Speedway with the current Dallara IR18. So, yeah, a very controversial move. IndyCar has responded to this news, which they released a couple of hours ago, around 6 p.m. So this news originally came out in the morning, I guess. I didn't find out about it until the early evening about it. I heard it from Phil, and then I looked at it. But IndyCar has said they responded to the confirmation of this licensing agreement. They say iRacing will continue to provide a valuable platform for the gaming community to experience IndyCar. While there will be changes to our presence in the near future, our current car will still be featured on iRacing across current tracks, including the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. This was important to us as we worked through our strategy to ensure fans would continue to access our racing across their favorite mediums, they said in a statement provided to Racer. We also remain confident our partnership with Motorsport Games, confirming that what we just said, will produce an engaging, realistic, enjoyable title feature for the NTT IndyCar series. Ultimately, 2023 will produce the first IndyCar-centric video game in nearly a decade while maintaining a presence for the sport in iRacing and beyond. So they say that we'll be allowed to continue to race. So I guess you can still race on Indianapolis, but it's no longer going to be officially sanctioned, which I think is a lot of the draw for people. And being able to have that official race in May, every May, like the real race, a lot of people put their time and effort to that. We have the Open Wheels 500, which I don't know what the status is going to be on that. I haven't even checked what they have said on their Discord page, but I'm sure there's going to be changes there. But a lot of people want to win or attempt to race this race in the same time frame as the Indianapolis 500 in May, when a lot of people are doing it. Of course, not only me at Broadjoy trying to do this, but we've seen other people like Jimmy Broadbent, who won it in 2021 or 2020, I think. Don't remember. Yes, I think it's 2020 when he did it, but he won it there, and you saw the emotion. He was in tears and everything. So, it's just an unfortunate news that came out, and really just shows the foresight that Penske, I think, has had in since they've owned the series in November 2019, when they announced that November 4th, 2020 or 2019, when they announced that they would take over the IndyCar series and the ownership of it. And, I think people thought that IndyCar would grow, and in some ways, kind of have, but, in a lot of other ways, they've really continued to miss the mark, I guess, on being able to maximize potential for this series, compared to, Formula One, compared to even NASCAR, where they're at currently right now. And, IndyCar has continued to, be that kind of lower tiered series in terms of popularity, I guess, that we've seen, since the last 20 years, going back all the way back to the IndyCar split in 1996 when CART and IndyCar, CART series and, the new IRL split and, led to the destruction of open wheel racing in America and everything. So, just shows the continued infighting, I guess, if you want to say, poor decision making by all those involved at the top, and shows that they continue to screw over their fans. They don't hold the fans' interest in truth, and it's unfortunate because we've seen the racing on iRacing with IndyCar, we've seen the racing on IndyCar series in real life, and it's a good racing, but they just don't know how to market this series, they don't know how to promote it, and ultimately they shoot themselves in the foot.
Yeah, and it's kind of going with the trend recently that they're not gonna. IndyCar went, and it's going back a few months, right to the end of the season when the road to Indy was separated. They left Anderson Productions or whatever, Dan Anderson's Road to Indy, which was called the Road to Indy, with the Pro 2000 and the other class, whatever. I'm forgetting it off the top. But the top rung was, of course, lights, the Indy Lights category. So then they not only left that, they kept Indy Lights, but then they renamed it Indy NXT, which is ridiculous. They've cut the funding. Like
wrestling.
Yeah, it sounds like the WWE. So it's like, why the heck are you? If you're gonna brand something, at least brand it differently than the wrestling. It's a WWE thing, and it's a series where literally two teams run the majority of the cars. They screwed the champion Linus Lundqvist out of the the scholarship and all that, the money to go and run the 3 races and then the Indy 500, which has been the case for years. So that was a big L. Then they're having the issue trying to get a third manufacturer because of the stupid engine formula that they made. It's not a formula that exists or can be utilized like they have in IMSA, where they're able to do BOP, and now between the WEC and IMSA, they have a convergence agreement. IndyCar could have had a similar type of formula years ago and been ahead of that. I mean, also, I would venture to say they should have been in the same role as kind of like where touring cars went with 4-cylinder, 2-liter engines, and you just put a turbo on it, then you could put hybrid. You could have done all those things because of the packaging with either an inline 4, or they could have come up with, unique concept maybe, but they missed the boat on that. The cars from 2012 have made some updates, aero updates, but they are not going to have a new car for at least another 3 years. So the car is going to be older than even the Dallara toilet from before, which is crazy. That's another problem. Then
the engines too.
Yeah, and the engines, they're going to add the Male or whatever is going to add the hybrid, I think, piece, or not hybrid. They're going to put the whatchamacall. They're going to put the let me scroll here. Sorry, just forgot. It's over. Hybrid partnership. Okay, so that was announced a couple days ago. So they'll be a part of that, but that's still they're having problems in terms of packaging. They were about to go and bring 2.4 liter V6 engines. Both Chevy and Honda said, we're going to cut the amount of cars we can support if we do that. So basically, now that's gone. You look at, there's other L's. You talk about Iowa Speedway, which was one of the most subscribed and a decent turnout at Iowa, with Hy-Vee coming in on board, and then IndyCar doing the promotions or whatever, and then now they're upping the ticket prices. I mean, it's like, how can a series? It's almost like we're going back, like what Josh is saying, to the old days in the split when they would do cockamamie things and they'd be racing in this shithole or that shithole, or they'd be racing crappy cars, or all this, like during the split. It's insane the amount of L's IndyCar take, and now this is the latest one. I mean, you're just napalming your fan base is what you're doing. You're supposed to be growing the brand. Instead, you're figuring out ways to just knock those branches off, those pillars off, to the point where you ain't gonna have anything. They don't draw crap on TV outside of the Indianapolis 500. They can't even get a 1. They can't even get a 1 on TV. And they're on, and now most of the races they have this coming season in 23 will be on NBC. But they can't even draw a 1 on NBC. Effing shitty golf tournaments draw more than a 1. Whatever other bullcrap that they put on, whether it's swimming or gymnastics or figure skating, draws better than IndyCar. I'm sure if they decided to start putting cornholing on there, that would outdraw IndyCar. I mean, it's like you gotta. I don't know what Penske Entertainment's plan is. I don't know how much Roger Penske has to do with all of this. It doesn't seem like they have a plan. They don't have a great plan in terms of promoting their drivers, which has been a problem for decades. When you consider how many cool people that are in this sport, I don't get it at all. It's just frustrating. And I get it on your side, Josh, as a sim guy, and being able to say you won that race, it's huge. And all these guys that have, and women that have won that race, it has more meaning now, but it's unfortunate because of, lack of foresight and just stupidity and ignorance. I mean, that's really what it is. I don't know how else to put it. When you're trying to figure out ways to get rid of fans. That's what you're trying to do. And you're talking about, another aspect that pisses me off about IndyCar is because now we're just going off, they don't have any races in the Northeast. It's ridiculous. You have Watkins Glen, you have Pocono, which, all right, fine, they may worry about safety, but they did a lot of work to get IndyCar back there, and they were building every year in terms of fans. Watkins Glen, perfect race. They could go and meet with IMSA. They could do an IMSA weekend instead of having that second weekend with the NASCAR. They could go and run a weekend in July or something, and they could run a doubleheader. They'll have the 6 hours. Well, that makes no sense because they have the 6 hours in June. But, maybe they run it in the fall or something. I don't know. Like, it's Watkins Glen. Damn it. It's one of the greatest road courses in the world. It held a U.S. Grand Prix. You're telling me the Indy cars can't go there? You're telling me, I get it's SMI, but if you're already going to that shithole Texas Motor Speedway, you can go to New Hampshire. They're talking about, we can't go to Milwaukee. Now they're trying to start bringing events back in Milwaukee. So why can't you go to Milwaukee? You're talking about VIR. How is VIR not in play for an IndyCar race? To me, it's just, Richmond, they were supposed to go to Richmond, then COVID happened, then that all went away. You have to know where your people are. You can't just saturate everything in the Midwest and screw people over on one side of the country for whatever reason. There are West Coast races, of course. You go up to Portland, you have California races. Of course, they used to have ACS, but who knows, maybe when ACS, whatever they're going to do with ACS, nobody knows at this point because it's a cluster. But the track is so goddamn rough, I wouldn't think IndyCar would want to be there anyway. But, and then because Phoenix is a disaster, there's no point in ever going back there. It's just unfortunate, and it's sad, really, because I love IndyCar racing, and I've loved IndyCar racing since I was a little kid. It's going back 30 years now. I've been a fan of IndyCar racing. And I think there's been many interesting and bad, awful off seasons, and a lot of them during the split, of course. But this might be one of the worst off seasons in IndyCar history. And the amount of damage that they've done to the brand and how much damage they've done to a lot of other aspects of the drivers, a series, a team. I don't think you're going to recover, especially when you have Roger Penske involved with Porsche trying to run. He's going to run dual programs in IMSA and in the WEC. Chip Ganassi has Cadillac, and he's running dual programs in IMSA and the WEC. You have other IndyCar Mike Shank with Acura, Bobby Rahal with BMW. So that you think about how many cars, that's 7, 9, 12 cars in IndyCar are owners that are also in IMSA. I might be forgetting other teams off the top of my head that are in IMSA, but also run an IndyCar off the top. But that's at least, in my mind, that's literally nearly half the grid has interest in the main class in IMSA that can go and run at Le Mans, but they can also run here and they can run every major sports car race in the world. I don't know. I guess it kind of goes back to the split, Josh, when Bill France Jr. and whoever, some of these other Leo Mel, some of these other assholes went and got into Tony George's ear and said, "Hey, go and make a make your own series," and basically in the process destroy IndyCar racing and allowed NASCAR, which was already on the up and up, to go and take off. And then Formula One was okay and with the troll, and they were able to do their thing right when IndyCar was at the peak and was drawing great ratings and had great TV coverage. It just feels like that all over again now. And that happened in the early 90s. So it's like right when I was in the first years of watching. It was like 93, 94 was when the early 90s was when they started talking about it. Like 91, they were really starting to talk about it. If you look at old qualifying shows with Dave Despain from the Indy 500.
Yeah.
And so, we're talking about 30 years later, we're kind of, and I mean, it's 25 years later, but it's like 30 years later from when all those kind of rumors and things started moving. We're kind of back in that point. Anna France is involved on one end, and it's not the George family in this case, but it's Roger Penske. And it's interesting because where does his interest lie? Outside of, it seems like his interest lies with Indianapolis Motor Speedway and his IndyCar team being successful. And it doesn't seem like they give a shit about the series. And he definitely cares about Porsche and wanting to get that program off the ground and be successful. So in the end, you have all those owners that are in bed with Jim France and IMSA, like you have Elio Castroneves. He might run the Daytona 500, 4-time Indianapolis 500 champion. I guess things are turning, but we will have some time to go and digest that, and hopefully maybe in 2023, whoever they hire for PR and whoever some of their decision makers are, have a reality check and they kind of reset, because the last 3 months for IndyCar since the season ended have been steaming hot garbage.
Yeah. Let me go back to this on the sim part of it. I mean, it's not the first time that iRacing has lost a license, because they used to be able to do the Le Mans 24 hours on iRacing, the 24 hours of Le Mans, and they also lost that to the same company, Motorsport Games, which, I mean, these guys are a complete, sham. They're not even, well, I mean, they are a real company, but, they have an unreleased game. They have no revenue whatsoever. I mean, it's complete shit. It's a total scam of a company, and you can look at it online. They have a lot of histories, or a lot of people have criticized how they've done things. And yeah, I mean, I'm trying to find some stuff to, look in, show this to you, but, I mean, IndyCar, made a mistake here, I think, doing this, signing an exclusive rights deal. It's not the first time, in a racing game, I mean, that this has happened, like I said, but also look at EA Sports. They signed an exclusive rights deal with NASCAR after 2003, and, that ended Papyrus basically, and then, Papyrus came back and became iRacing, but, NASCAR, for a few years, you had the EA Sports games, and they were okay at, in 2003, but then as the years went on, after that, they became stale and they got worse. and then eventually the license expired, and then NASCAR games haven't really been the same since the EA Sports games, and going back to the original Papyrus games, and of course now really if you want to really get the true NASCAR racing experience, you pretty much need to have iRacing, because NASCAR 21 I think also was made by Motorsport Games or some other company. It's always they've always had something wrong on the console games since the old EA Sports days in the mid 2000s. But yeah, I mean it's just an unfortunate thing that we're gonna have to deal with for a bit. And yeah, I did look on the Open Wheels 500 forum or their community on Discord, and they did say, yeah, there is no more Open Wheels 500 for the foreseeable future, until they come to a better agreement, I guess, IndyCar and iRacing. And then also, you talk about the split and everything. Well, I mean, let's go hold a US 500 at Michigan on iRacing. Why not? Let's go for it. And we'll have our own three. I mean, it's literally the virtual version of the split happening in front of our face right now. So it's very very dumb situation, and the lack of foresight that IndyCar has right now is just something that we shouldn't be dealing with.
Yeah, it's unfortunate and it's crazy. And it's a bad way to lead into the holiday season, but the way that IndyCar's been going recently, I think their consistency is top notch in taking L's in general here. So they need a lot of help. I'm free. If you want to hire me for PR, I'll put my hand up. I know people that would be willing to. I think Josh would be willing to. We could go and help. I have friends, Frank and Missy, who did the Indy Sports Car podcast. I'm sure they could go, and if they knew you could pay them the money, because, I mean, Frank has a good job. Missy, both of them had decent jobs. And if you gave them jobs to be the media coordinator, I'm sure they could go and do the job too, because us fans are what the sport is about. It's a reason why, guys like Connor Daly have been able to finally get an opportunity full time in IndyCar, albeit he also has a crypto sponsor. But that's beside the point. But we'll move forward here into the football, and Josh gets to go again here. Jacksonville makes a huge comeback, down 27-10 against the Dallas Cowgirls in the third quarter or second quarter.
Third quarter.
And then they scored 30 points. It was 30-7 after that. Trevor Lawrence went off and assisted in helping me go and advance to the semifinals of Fall Brawl, which of course Josh also did. So you got a lot to talk about here, man, in terms of both your actual team, who's now in a race for a possible 4 seed in the possibly getting the AFC South after having a rough start to the year, getting a 4 seed and being one of the hottest teams in the NFL at the moment, while also your fantasy team has a decent chance to maybe go and finally get over the hump here in this league.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, let's talk about something good right now. And the Jacksonville Jaguars, as you said, they defeated the Dallas Cowboys 40-34 in overtime on Sunday. It was a great game to watch in the second half. The first half was okay. They fell down 14-0. They forced Dallas to punt in the first possession, and then they were driving down the field to about midfield. And then Travis Etienne took a halfback draw and fumbled the ball. And then Dallas put up 14 unanswered. Jacksonville came back, scored a touchdown. Dallas got another touchdown. Jacksonville struggled, going to the halftime, and then third quarter, Jacksonville got a field goal. Dallas got another field goal. Trevor threw a pick, and when he threw a pick, I thought it was over. But not over, but I thought, maybe today's not the day, and everything. And then Dallas got another field goal, but then Jacksonville got another touchdown. And I was like, well, hold on a minute, this thing's not over. We'll still got a lot of time left here in the third quarter. And then Prescott threw an interception, and then Jacksonville got another touchdown, get within 3. And then fourth quarter comes, we force another punt, and then Jacksonville goes down the field and scores another touchdown. Dallas responds with another touchdown, and then Trevor has a chance to win the game, and then he goes scrambles for the first down, and then Trevor's trying to do too much there, but then he fumbled the ball, and then and then I thought, well, okay, we had our chance, maybe just this is as good as it's gonna get. We played well, came back and fought hard against a playoff team, and one of their better teams in the league right now. But then Dallas ran 2 times. We used our 2 timeouts, and then they threw it down deep in the field. They really low percentage throw, in my opinion. They threw a deep pass along the sideline that fell incomplete, and then that left Jacksonville one more timeout to go down and get a field goal with 5 seconds left. And I haven't really been able to think that their kicker was really, really good, but their kicker was able to get 2 field goals today and was able to get a very clutch, I think like 50-yard field goal or 48-yard field goal to send the game to overtime. And then we punted the ball in overtime, but then Dallas had the ball. They were moved down the field. They got to the 50, and then 3rd and 4 happens, and Dak Prescott throws a pick 6, and they returned it for a touchdown, and that was incredibly exciting. Rayshon Jenkins, one of the biggest plays that we've seen from the defense this year and in a long time, and so this puts Jacksonville at a 6-8 record and has a chance to go out and win the AFC South, and they have a good chance because the AFC South not really great in terms of overall record. Tennessee has lost multiple games in a row. They're now 7-7. Their quarterback Ryan Tannehill just got put on injured reserve or ruled out for more than likely for the season. So their backup guy is in right now. They don't have a good offense right now. Jacksonville shut them down, kicked their butts in Tennessee a week ago, and Jacksonville faces them at home in 2 weeks or 3 weeks in January 8th for the final game of the season. So Jacksonville has 2 games to win. They got to go up against the New York Jets and then face the Houston Texans over in Houston. So it's going to be exciting, and I think they can beat both of those teams. Zach Wilson's going to be playing. He's been very turnover prone. Trevor Lawrence is playing on fire right now. He's one of the best QBs in the league, and playing at a level I've never seen Jaguars quarterback play. So I'm here for it, and confident in his ability to go out and win games now. So just glad to see it happen and everything. And I think they have a really good chance to go out and win the AFC South and go into the playoffs. And I didn't think it would happen. I mean, I placed a bet at the beginning of the year that they would either get 8 wins or make the playoffs, and both are looking very likely that it could happen. So we'll have to wait and see and everything. And if they get both, it'd be really great. If they get one or the other, fine with that too. But they have a chance to make it in the playoffs. Did not seriously think that would happen. But from where we were a year ago, firing Urban Meyer to where we are now, just shows the level of growth and how bad Urban Meyer was as a coach, just holding back Trevor like that and dealing with everything that they had to deal with Urban Meyer. Because now we're seeing Trevor Lawrence ascend into his game and ascend into his status as an NFL quarterback and be able to do it at a high level. So never seen any Jaguars quarterback play like this. And Blake Bortles had some big plays, a lot of stats and everything, but didn't really have the ability to lead the team down from a comeback. Trevor's done it 3 times this season. Never seen from Blake Bortles be able to do that. Didn't see it with David Garrard. I wasn't here as a fan, wasn't here around for the Mark Brunell era. I caught the very end of it, but being a Jacksonville fan, but I wasn't and wouldn't have really remembered it anyways because I was very young when he was the quarterback, the Jaguars in the late '90s for Jacksonville. So this is probably the best I've ever seen QB play in Jacksonville, and finally seeing what a good quarterback actually looks like. So I'm here for it, and the season's been pretty incredible. with a lot of comeback victories in the last month, and kind of reminds me of 2010, where we had a lot of comeback victories and a lot of very exciting wins, that year, but didn't make the playoffs. But I think that team wasn't very talented and got very lucky with what they were able to do. And I think this team has the ability to actually legitimately compete for a playoff spot and be able to make it. So, I'm excited to see what happens tomorrow night when Trevor goes up and the Jaguars go up against the New York Jets. And, they have a very formidable defense. So, looking forward to see how he's able to perform against tough defense like that, and settle the debate that the number 1 overall pick is better than number 2 overall pick in Zach Wilson. So there's that and everything for the Jags, and of course fantasy wise, I'm in the semifinals and go up against Wilson, which I favor that matchup over Jeff. Well, until the other day when they said that Jalen Hurts wasn't going to play, so. Maybe that matchup for you is better than for me, but I'll take it, and I have a shot to go to the fantasy championship. Could be against you, so let's see what happens. And it's gonna be interesting if we face each other in the fantasy playoffs, and I'm looking forward to it. But had a good game for my fantasy team this past week, and just to go over the scores and everything from week 15, Derek Carr, of course, really good game. Comeback victory against the New England Patriots. Tyreek Hill had a good game on Saturday night in the snow, in the midst of snowballs. Brandon Ayuk didn't really have a great game, but this 49ers ended up winning anyways. Derrick Henry fumbled the ball. Derrick Henry fumbled the ball and had issues against the Chargers, but still scored 31 points. Najee Harris had a good game. Gerald Everett had a good game for a tight end. David Montgomery had a good day running the ball and catching passes from Justin Fields. Geno Smith had a okay game, even though he didn't really play all that well against the 49ers defense, but still managed to get 23 points. And then defensively, had enough from Donovan Wilson, Jonathan Allen. They both got pretty good amount of points. And then Foye Oluokan's been on fire this whole year as a linebacker for the Jags. So he's been probably their best player overall in defense in terms of, being able to, make tackles and make plays. So, going up against Wilson this weekend and, currently have a 37% chance of winning, but, we'll see how that changes throughout the weekend. Kind of how it was initially with, going up against who's, Steve. So, we'll see how it goes this weekend in fantasy, and looking forward to post Christmas. Looking forward to seeing that matchup turn into a W, and we'll see if I face you. So if I face Jeff, but fantasy's looking really good right now, and I feel like if things go my way, got a really good shot at taking home the title. And I'll send you my address, and you can send me the championship belt when it happens. So looking forward to it.
Hopefully I get to go and keep it personally. After my other team flamed out and I'm playing for dead last on my other Yahoo team, which is insane considering how I've done in that league over time. Our sleeper team, I think half our team is on IR. Before I get into the Niners, because obviously 7 wins in a row. We're on Mr. Irrelevance, definitely relevant, Brock Purdy, et cetera. I'm doing a show, right? And then so freaking unbelievable. I'm sorry about that, but yeah, I'm looking through this team first. What is it? We have it's a keeper league. So Debo is out from my team. Tyler Lockett's out. Damian Pierce just got put on IR, and Jonathan Taylor got put on IR. Samuel Debo and Jonathan Taylor were 2 of our keepers. The other keeper we had was Trevor Lawrence. So I've been a Trevor Lawrence believer. I just knew, I had a feeling, it just took a while. And by God, Doug Peterson was always looking for that quarterback that could run his system. It's the Andy Reid coaching tree. It's essentially a form of the West Coast Bill Walsh, coaching tree, but it's now in new age 2022 with the spread offenses and stuff like that. So we got a bunch of table scraps here and there. I do have Dallas Goedert on that team as well, but I mean, the 49ers are, as the tea kettle goes off while I'm recording a show, the 49ers have won 7 games in a row. It's crazy. There was a while ago there were 3-4 when when this run started. So it's like to see where they are. They've won the division. It's something, and I'm really really happy about it. I'm going to keep on being happy about it. If Minnesota hadn't made the biggest comeback in the history of the NFL, the Niners would have been in the mix to possibly get into the number 2 seed. It's still possible, but highly unlikely, because I don't think Minnesota's schedule is so daunting after this. So, I mean, you have to go and look at. I'm just curious about their schedule. Yeah. So they have the what is this at Viking that? Yeah. So they have over the next. They play the Giants on Saturday, which, to be fair, Giants are in the mix for the playoffs. The Packers at Lambeau, and then Week 18 is the Bears. So that's a win. There's a pretty high, I could say that 2 out of the 3 games, it feels like 2-1. I mean, they should win at home at US Bank Stadium, a beautiful stadium that I got to visit. Going to Lambeau on New Year's Day, having to beat the Packers with Aaron and them, who knows? But the Bears, they suck, but they do have a quarterback. In terms of the 49ers, they have been, they have been on fire, as I said, and the defense is at another level. Fred Warner is a part of my fantasy team, so not Fred Warner, I mean Dre Greenlaw, which is amazing how he's playing. I mean, I'm looking back at this. The Niners lost 11-10 on Sunday Night Football to the fucking Denver Broncos. Lost with Trey Lance in the rain, 19-10 week 1 of the Chicago Bears. It was absolute trash. Then they beat the Rams before the bottom fell out. Beat Carolina a couple of weeks before they traded for Christian McCaffrey, who has made all the major difference on the offense. Lost to the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, let's be honest here. Okay, fine. I can take the Chicago loss. I can deal with Atlanta because they were just not good that day. So they were 3-4, but they should have beat the Broncos. We'd be tied with the Minnesota Vikings. And I think we'd probably be there for the 2 seed because the Broncos are a dumpster fire. And then the Kansas, when Kermit the Frog came into Levi's and anally annihilated them. Yeah, that's what happened. Because what is it? 1-1, 1-2, 2-2, 3-2, 3-3. Yeah, it's 3-4. So ever since the Kansas City Chiefs went and destroyed the Niners have not lost. They haven't lost since the end of October. And in that time, they had 3 divisional wins. They're right now perfect in division this season, and they're going to go against the Washington Redskin General Commanders at home this weekend, and then they'll go to Las Vegas on New Year's Day and play Arizona, which is going to probably be a 4:25 kickoff because of Arizona's whole entire team imploding too. So right now, it's the Niners are on fire. The defense is the best defense in the NFL by far. The Brock Purdy is playing at a high level, at a level that is, unexpected from a guy who is Mr. Irrelevant. But he's done the job. It's something that they finally, after all these years under the Kyle Shanahan regime, not only did they have 1 quarterback, they had 3 quarterbacks that could actually do something. But Christian McCaffrey being added into the mix has definitely helped this whole entire offense. The left side of the line is elite. Trent Williams is the best tackle in the NFL. Even the players agree with that. Aaron Banks has been a revelation here this year at guard. after that, center's okay. The right side of the line, not great, but GK kind of helps. And GK had a big game against Seattle on last Thursday night. Ayuk was quiet last week, but he's been pretty darn reliable through most of the year. Debo's had an off year here in his first year since getting the contract, but I feel like he'll be back here before the end of the season, and I think he's saving it up for the playoffs. On defense, the rush ends were kind of having issues with health on the rush ends, but Samson Ebukam has been playing at a high level this year. Armstead is opening up holes for Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa is a manimal. I think he's subhuman. I think he's a robot. There's no way that he could be good, but he is. Warner and Greenlaw are just like Patrick Willis and Navarro Bowman, and they're the new version. And Greenlaw's a tackling machine. Warner calls all the plays and adjustments. You got in corner, we have Mooney Ward, who has been one of the best signings in all of free agency this past season or whatever, past year. Jimmy Ward has went to nickel, which is actually a good call there. DeMondre Lenore's playing really well. And then Tayshaun Gibson and Talanoa Hufanga are a great safety duo, and Hufanga is 2.0 Troy Polamalu the way he hits. He has bad intentions whenever he hits somebody. So that defense trying to go and run this out, not lose until the middle of February, and that would mean the Lombardi would be back in Santa Clara and San Francisco's hands for the first time since 1994. But they might have to end up beating the Kansas City Chiefs in that scenario in Glendale to make that happen, but we will see. Before I move on to the actual NFL,
Jacksonville Jaguars.
Or the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's possible too, the way they're playing. I was able to win last week over what is that? That's week 5. Gringo Mandingo. So Professor J, who finished third this year, or finished third in the regular season. First time in a while he was in contention. He's been in contention years before, but this year he was in large part due to Josh Allen. And Josh Allen had 51 points on, what is it? I think it was a Saturday game, and with the snow. But Trevor Lawrence got 43.3. Joe Burrow got me 38 points. So that helped a lot. Professor J has GK and Raheem Mostert. They both played really well. A lot of double-digit people, but Stephon Diggs had a quiet night. DK Metcalf had a quiet week, but then Tony Pollard was able to do some work. Quiet day for Joe Mixon. Evan Ingram had a good, solid performance. I mean, the wide receivers, I have 3 of the best wide receivers in Amon-Ra St. Brown as well. None of them did crazy. Julian Love, who plays corner and safety for the Giants, is a tackling machine. Sam Hubbard for Cincinnati got hurt. Greenlaw had 20 points. I won by, 3.6 points, and beat Professor J. So sorry to you, Professor J, but your Buffalo Bills are really damn good. So you have that. This week, I'm going against Jeff, who 2 weeks ago, I was close to beating him and would have knocked him out of the number 1 seed. Wilson would have been the number 1 seed. Lost by 11.4 points to Jeff there in week 14 in the last week of the regular season. In the previous matchup I played him, I lost by 28 points or so. So that wasn't close, but I definitely kept them honest this last time. Burrow and Trevor Lawrence, I basically we were able to match points with his quarterbacks, which was Jalen Hurts and Justin Herbert. Diggs had a crappy game. Amon-Ra St. Brown was quiet. Pollard was good. Mixon was okay. Tight end has been a nightmare all year. DK Metcalf actually played all right, got a touchdown. And I had amazing production out of my defensive play IDPs. But I couldn't fade the stack of Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown, Miles Sanders, who had 32 points that day, and Josh Jacobs. So I really couldn't fade that, but only lost by 11 points. Have a chance. Stranger things have happened. You back into the playoffs, you never know what can happen. Niners, it's like the Niners, they're now the 3 seed. More than likely, they're going to stay there. Nobody, the NFC South is a steaming pile of crap. So they're not going to drop out of the 3. Seattle, they lost. They're just trying to make the playoffs. So they're trying to move up to 2 and get maybe a little more favorable matchup per se, and more likely guarantee 2 home games before an NFC Championship game, likely against the Philadelphia Eagles. Of course, Jeff is a Philadelphia Eagles fan, so we'll see what happens. The projections are pretty close again. And Trevor's, of course, playing tomorrow, as Josh mentioned. So need a lot of. We need this team to show up. If everybody shows up, who knows what's going to happen? In the case of Jeff, he had to substitute Jalen Hurts because he's not going to play this week for Zach Wilson. Interesting. Largely because I went and used most of my waiver budget to get Gardner Minshew. And that was a strategic call. I said, I'm not going to allow Jeff to, and he has nearly all of his budget. You would think that to block everybody and make sure he has the quarterback for his team, he would have paid for that. Not sure one way or the other how that worked out, but I got him. Don't know. I doubt I'll probably use him. Hopefully you don't have to use him. And hopefully I'm able to get this team over the hump the next 2 weeks, and get the championship and finally become 7-time. I've been a 6-time champion of this league, but I haven't won in a while. So we'll see what happens with that. The standings going into this week for the where am I looking at? Schedules, records. What am I doing here? NFL Network, schedule. Oh, standing. There you go. Standings, playoff picture. So first of all, Philly and the Cowgirls, because of the Giants beating the Washington Redskin General Commanders, locked up a playoff spot even after choking against Jacksonville, largely because Trevor Lawrence is a freak. But the Eagles and the Cowboys are in. Cowboys right now are going to be the 5 seed, likely playing Tampa on the road in the first round. Vikings have locked up a playoff spot and the division more than likely. They've clinched division and they have a clinched playoff spot. The Buccaneers are only a game ahead of all 3 other teams. Atlanta started Desmond Ridder last week, and it was ugly. They lost to the Saints. The Saints are crap too, but they still have a chance. And Carolina, for Steve Wilkes, they've played 3 quarterbacks this year, or 4 quarterbacks this year. Been absolutely insane. Baker Mayfield now plays for the LA Rams, and Steve Wilkes has somehow or another gotten this team to a point where they might be able to be a force, win a division, be a 4 seed. And Tepper would actually have a hard decision if he were to, and it would look bad if he let him go, if that happens. But Tampa Bay, they're still there. You got Brady, but it's not going well this year. Niners have have won the division, as we mentioned earlier. So the Rams and Cardinals are an abomination. The Rams are the worst defending champion since the Denver Broncos in 1999. Earliest the defending Super Bowl champion's been eliminated from the playoffs ever. So Sean McVay's kind of wishing he went to Amazon Prime. Bills have locked up a playoff spot, but the division isn't locked up yet because they have a 3-game lead, but they could probably lock it up this weekend. And the Bengals right now are only a game ahead of the Ravens. The Ravens are on. They may have Lamar Jackson back. They may be playing Tyler Huntley. Don't really know. The fact is, with the East is interesting. But with the playoffs, the Jets, of course, are playing tomorrow against Josh's Jacksonville Jaguars, who are only a game behind the Titans, who now are going to. Yeah, I didn't see the news about Ryan Tannehill, but that means they're going to be playing. What the hell is the backup guy?
Malik Willis.
Malik Willis from Liberty. Yeah. So Malik Willis, the rookie, will be starting in limited action. Malik Willis has struggled. So their offense is already not good, and then they're one-dimensional, and now you're putting a rookie quarterback in the mix too. They have no wide receivers. They have no tight ends. Their offensive line is meh, and then Derrick Henry can't do everything. So it's not looking good for them. Jacksonville's running all cylinders right now, so looking good for them. Of course, Kermit the Frog and Andrew Ryad and the Chiefs, they win the division for a 7th year in a row. So in terms of the playoffs, let's get it. Playoffs right now. So we'll start with the NFC. 4 of the playoff spots are locked up. Of course, the Eagles, Vikings, and Niners. Niners are a game behind the Vikings. Dallas Cowgirls locked up a playoff spot. Will likely be the number 1 wild card. The Buccaneers, along with everybody in that division, are still in the race for that 4 seed to hold a home playoff game. The Giants are moved up to the 6th seed, and then they're playing the Vikings, of course, this weekend. Washington's playing the Niners this weekend. And then on the bubble, Seattle, which is a half game behind, and the Lions with Motor City Dan Campbell are 7-7, both of them. Seattle has to go to the Chiefs, I think they're going to the Chiefs. So that's pretty rough. And then the Lions are playing the Panthers. So that's a swing game. If the Lions win that, then Panthers more than likely are done. Panthers somehow win. It opens up a door for the Packers if they can beat the Dolphins on Sunday, on Christmas Day. Aaron could backdoor himself into the playoffs with, what has been a pretty atrocious season. And then, so that's really what it is there. In the AFC, the Bills and the Chiefs have clinched a playoff spot. Bills have not clinched a division as of yet, but likely will after beating the Bears this weekend. Cincinnati, of course, has that game lead on Baltimore. Baltimore's situation at quarterback is key to if they're going to be able to swing that back around. Bengals are playing the Patriots this weekend. Tennessee's playing the Texans. So even with Malik Willis at quarterback, I think they have a pretty good chance. But to be honest, the Texans the last 2 weeks have played really, really well. They could have beat the Kansas City Chiefs, which is something. Of course, Kansas City lost to Indianapolis earlier this year. So, and then they should have beat the Cowgirls too. So who knows? Maybe they go and win. They finally get a second win. The Chargers are now moved up to the 6th seed, and Miami has dropped to 7. Chargers play Indianapolis. Miami's playing the Packers, I mentioned earlier. Baltimore is playing Atlanta Falcons with Desmond Ridder, as I mentioned, the rookie from Cincinnati. New England dropped out of the playoffs, are a game behind, along with the Jets. The Jets are playing Jacksonville, who is right behind them. The Raiders are playing the Steelers this weekend on the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception, and I'd be remiss today. The great Franco Harris passed away at the age of 72, the man that caught the Immaculate Reception, ran it in, and essentially put the Pittsburgh Steelers on the map. And Hall of Famer, one of the great running backs in history, NFL, one of the great people, and passed away this morning, or we heard about that this morning. And so now that game has more significance in terms of, the Franco Harris is passing. So that we'll see what happens there. Indianapolis, somehow there still has a chance to backdoor their way, but they're going to need a lot of help. They're going to probably get eliminated this weekend because they've won one game. They beat the Raiders, and since then they've been trash. So yeah, that's what it is in the NFL this year right now. So got a couple of weeks to go. We'll be back. in after week 18 or no? Yeah, we'll be back after week 18, and we'll tell you who's going to be in the playoffs at that point. So, and we'll give you the results on who wins Fall Brawl as well. Time for the F1 season review. So, in that, there's been some news, of course. F1 is becoming like FIFA and some other aspects of our lives in terms of social media. They're banning personal and political statements, which is convenient, largely because they are in bed with the Saudis and Qatar and Bahrain and some of these other dictatorship countries, so it kind of makes a lot of sense. The Formula One is going down a bad path, but hey, they got Drive to Survive. They got lots of fans. Americans are watching because they have no commercial free coverage. Yeah, at what cost? I mean, the main piece, of course, was Fish Lips going and winning 15 races last in 2022. They did the job for sure. They had the best car the whole entire year, or for the majority of the year, and he was able to win his first legitimate world championship. And but I think Red Bull had the right idea in terms of the new formula, new aerodynamic, the new aero and the new style cars. They were ready for that, and they made the right car. They struggled with reliability early in the season. The first 3 races fell out with Fish Lips, but then after that, Verstappen only lost 5 more times the rest, or I'm trying to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 5 more times the rest of the year. So he won 15 out of 23 races, and he had stretches of winning. He had 3 wins in a row, then 2, then 5, which is where basically he locked it up from Ricard all the way through Monza. So the end of the European season, last 5 European races, he won, basically closed the championship there. Then he won 3 races, the Japan, and then the American swing. Wasn't in there for Brazil, which was fine, and then won the last race of the year. So I guess, he did the job this year, Josh, and he actually legitimately won it. But we'll see what it means next year and what Red Bull does to see how they can go and keep progressing in terms of who they have to face next year.
Yeah, we'll see, for next year with Max Verstappen, of course. Red Bull extremely dominant this year. That had a great year, of course, with Verstappen, and of course Sergio Perez had a decent year himself, winning 2 races and 11 podiums. So both of those drivers, great year. Didn't finish the 1-2 sweep, but they sandwiched between him and Leclerc, to get the constructors title as well. So great year by Red Bull, of course, and I think they benefited a lot from this new, the new package or the new rules and everything, and they were the team that figured it out. Of course, they had the cost cap issues as well, which probably helped them achieve this. But at the end of the day, they were able to set the pace for the entire season. At the beginning of the year, they traded races with Ferrari, of course, but Ferrari continued to make mistakes throughout the year. And pretty much after Monaco is basically Ferrari lost pace with Red Bull, and you saw Max go on that huge winning streak from Ricard all the way down through Monza. So this is a very dominant season for that team, and can't ask for anything more from a driver in terms of that. But at the same time, from a series perspective, I think you want to see more competitiveness. It's legitimate, but want to see more challenge to that, right? At least have a little excitement, but not all that different from what we've seen in the past for Formula One. Other drivers have also dominated seasons, so we'll have to see next year. Do they get a challenge from Ferrari or Mercedes. Can Ferrari with Leclerc and Carlos Sainz, of course, their team direct manager resigned. They have a new manager. We'll talk about that in a minute. But can they get a challenge from them? Lewis, can he come back from a winless year and challenge Verstappen? Perhaps come down to another Verstappen versus Hamilton for the title. Perhaps, maybe we'll see. But yeah, I mean, a really dominant year from Max Verstappen, and had the title locked up a long time ago, and pretty much was able to have a victory tour for like the last couple of months of the season. So Verstappen, at least he has two multiple titles to his name, so he's able to take that and claim that. But I'd like to see how he's challenged next year, especially since now he'll have 2 consecutive years of racing under this new formula that changed at the end of 2021. So we'll have to see. But yeah, very very impressive year from Ferrari or from Red Bull overall.
Yeah, because Checo Perez was up there, and when it comes to his battle with Charles Leclerc, they had a battle all the way to the end. And Leclerc beat him by 3 points for second in the World Championship. Leclerc, of course, had 3 wins. Perez had 2, separated by 1 podium. Leclerc had 12 to Perez's 11. Leclerc led the series with 10 poles, but only got 3 wins out of that, which is not good. And a lot of those races, of course, Verstappen was the benefactor. Then, so when it comes to Red Bull, first and third, dominated constructors, destroyed constructors, and Ferrari was able to hold on for second. Mercedes ended up finishing third. That was the way it was the whole year. Mercedes had went with a alternative with the no side pod formula. I think Williams also did that. I'm trying to remember off the top how many other teams kind of did that. I think Aston just did not do a good job at the start of the year. I think those 2 teams were the only 2 teams that did the 0 side pod, and it didn't work because on top of that, trying to run the car as low as they wanted to get the new diffusers and getting the downforce change. They went and made it more with the under trays and the floor instead of with the wings and other aspects of the car. And the car was really rough to drive, and it really screwed up Lewis and George at times this year. The Ferrari roller coaster, Josh mentioned it. They've hired a new team principal in Fred Vasseur, formerly of Sauber, formerly of other teams. So he's been around a long time, very experienced, but having to come in to replace a guy who's been a Ferrari guy in Binotto, is rough. Ferrari, it's trying to win there. It hasn't been easy. They haven't really been a consistent winner, honestly, since, Schumacher retired. And so we're talking about 16 years ago when he retired. So that's crazy. They've won 1 world championship since then, and that was mainly because Ron Dennis fucked up. So that in multiple ways, or else that wouldn't have been a world championship either. And Kimi Räikkönen wouldn't have won a world championship, but whatever. God bless him. The amount of mistakes they made this year in strategy, calls, the pit road miscues, then you add the litany of errors that both Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz had. If you're trying to compete for a world championship, you can't do that. And they're going to have to clean all that up in 23 to have a shot against Fish Lips. In terms of, did you have anything to add on that, Josh, in terms of the Ferrari struggles they had? I mean, they finished second in constructors and they won 4 races, but they probably could have had a lot more out of this year if they did things a lot better.
No, yeah, I think if they had executed their strategy, a lot better than what what happened. I think we would have seen a lot more competitive season from them. They opened the year 2 out of 3 with Leclerc, winning there, but then after that, they just had issues throughout the season. For Leclerc, great year, 2 out of 3 to start the year, and then Miami, started on pole there, but ended up finishing second to Verstappen, and I think Verstappen did have a better pace there. Finished 3 seconds ahead of him, but there's always an opportunity. At Monaco, I think Ferrari both had a chance to potentially win going into that race. Remember year before in 21, Leclerc didn't even make it out of the starting grid. They had the issues there and had the pole but couldn't race in the race, and it was a really embarrassing situation for Ferrari. But this year, Leclerc started on the pole, then led the first 17 laps, but then strategy, they messed up again, and then Carlos Sainz was also able to pressure Sergio, take the lead, and then he ended up relinquishing it to Sergio Perez, and then at the end was able to stay on the tail of Sergio Perez. But both of those cars had a chance to win the Monaco Grand Prix, and I think due to Ferrari's strategy there, they failed to do so. And of course, that's Formula One. That's the one race that you want to win, outside the championship, I think. And I think 2 years in a row where they had a legitimate shot going into the event to win, they failed. I think that's reflects on their season, and I think there's a reason why they're going away from from their management from this year. Benito, I don't know his name actually.
Mattia Benatti.
Yeah, Benatti. Yeah, I think it's very clear why they're moving away from him and going to somebody else. So if it weren't for that, if he was actually successful, he'd still have a job and everything. So I think it's very clear from my perspective that they gone in a different direction there, and they're trying something else. So I think Ferrari, they have a chance to recover. They did show great pace, of course, throughout the year. Of course, Charles Leclerc won many poles, won 10 poles, and Carlos Sainz added 3 more poles. Carlos Sainz also got his first win in Silverstone, so there's that. But they left a lot on the table, so we'll have to see next year if they can begin to challenge Red Bull on a more consistent week-to-week basis.
Yeah, absolutely, and we'll see what Fred Vasseur can do. Benotto was a Ferrari guy through and through. Started as a mechanic, worked on the team, was part of Michael Schumacher's crew when he was winning those championships was the team principal. It's one of the probably most thankless jobs in all of motorsports, but with all the pressure and expectations that come from the Tifosi. Checo Perez, I mentioned him earlier. Of course, he won a couple races, but in large part, he basically laid down for Max Verstappen. He was made into a guinea pig at times, which he lost confidence during the middle of the year, which is kind of where the championship got away from him. He was somewhat close to Verstappen early in the year, was a little faster than him at times, but then it got away from him. And by the end, he was just a domestique, which, to be honest, that's what Red Bull does. And they screwed him out of a win at Mexico, which they should have had. Then you have Verstappen saying, I don't pull over. I'm not going to give the position back, this, that, and the other thing, because he said that Perez crashed intentionally at Monaco. Then something came out where they're saying Perez said that he did or something, whatever. I mean, Red Bull, they're going down the path where the same way that Vettel and Mark Webber did. So that's something we have to look at for next year, because you have Liam Lawson now in Super Formula and trying to come back and run Formula One in 2024. You have Nick De Vries, who's going to be in an AlphaTauri next year, who has experience and is friends supposedly with Verstappen, just as 2 examples. And then, Red Bull's got a wide berth of drivers, a lot of them in Formula 2, Wasa, other ones there. So who knows what will come of that? Checo's been steady enough. He's been more of given more of a fight compared to some of the other teammates that Verstappen has had in his career there. So we'll see with Checo, but he had a career best finish and up third in the standings, got his first pole at Saudi, wins 2 races, as you mentioned earlier, wins Monaco. So, I mean, there's something to be said about that, but I think he's wanting more. I would think he would have wanted more out of this season, Checo, but he wasn't given that opportunity. In terms of Mercedes, that's an interesting, after how many years in a row since 2014 winning the Constructors Championship, this first year since 2014, no Constructors Championship. For the first time in his career, Lewis Hamilton didn't win a pole or a race, but George Russell won a pole and a race as the teammate for the first year at Mercedes to Lewis Hamilton, the eventual leader of the Mercedes Formula One program. Stood out in 2021, getting Williams up the grid again, getting podiums for Williams and great qualifyings and all that, which basically made Valtteri Bottas dispensable because his performance and his inconsistencies, not only in qualifying but definitely in the race, were issues. And George Russell with a terrible car. Mercedes probably made the worst car they've made since 2012, and probably legitimately one of the 2 or 3 worst cars Lewis has ever had. The 2009 McLaren can compete with that. But even the 2009 McLaren, they started fixing it. They started figuring things out. He was able to win poles and win races by the time the middle of the season. Never turned around that way for him this year, largely due to the domination of fish lips. I mean, I guess the way to look at this, Josh, is to me, of course, my bias aside, Lewis is one of the greatest drivers ever. The stats speak for themselves. He's motivated. He's going to continue racing for a while, it seems. But now he has a teammate again. This only the second time legitimately he's been beaten by a teammate, because 2016 was not, same way as 2021 was not legitimate either. No matter what you want to say. You can go suck it if you really think that either of those championships were won legitimately. Since the only other than Jenson Button, the first teammate that has legitimately beaten Lewis Hamilton is George Russell, and he's much younger. He's hungry, but the thing is, he brings that pace, but he also brings a calm, and he brings a balance to the team where he's not somebody that's going to go and make huge waves. So in that sense, he's kind of quiet, unassuming, but he does his work behind the wheel. Lewis is flashy. Of course, FIA don't want him to be flashy anymore. So I guess you're going to piss him off. If you want to motivate him, they're giving him enough things to be motivated about, and make him come back with the W14 and do work again like he's done for most of his career. But going and seeing Lewis Hamilton struggle this year was weird. It's been a while. But then you also have to give credit to George Russell for what he did with a car that was definitely not good, and to finish fourth in the World Championship, beating Carlos Sainz by 29 points, and only 30 points behind Sergio Perez, 33 behind Charles Leclerc. 8 podium finishes. Lewis got him by 1 on that. He got 2 poles, none for Lewis, and of course 1 win versus the none. Average of 5.4, which is right there essentially with Leclerc and Perez. Average finish. Ran at the finish of all but 1 race. The 1 race that he didn't was the British Grand Prix, and that was largely because he was checking on his friend Alex Albon, and then Guan Yu Zhou too, after the massive first turn wreck that took place there. I mean, is it a changing of the guard at Mercedes? Are we seeing that now? Or do you believe, Josh, that Lewis is going to come back and with a with the mindset of just wanting to destroy not just his teammate, but the likes of Verstappen and others that could be in his way of a possible 8th world championship.
So, I mean, this is what I think. I think we're in a transition period. It's very transitory for Lewis Hamilton and George Russell. I think Lewis is still capable of winning races and everything, and I think he could still win a championship. But I think the difference between George Russell and somebody like Valtteri Bottas, who he replaced, I think they have the future in mind for Russell, that he's going to be the guy at some point. Because I think all the other teammates that Lewis, Nico Rosberg and then Valtteri Bottas, I think those guys were clearly, I think, they had, the mindset that those guys were complimenting Lewis Hamilton during his run, at Mercedes. But now George Russell has come along and he's still, I think, pushing Lewis Hamilton, but he's not just complimenting him. He's going to be the guy at some point, whether that's after next year or in 2 years. At some point, he's going to be the guy, unless he leaves, which I don't think he would. I think they have a lot invested in him right now. So I think, he's going to be the guy at some point. And I think that's the difference between and what makes him, challenging to Lewis Hamilton. And you saw him, like I said, you said win this year, and he's shown his ability to compete at Formula One, and he's been better than Lewis this whole year. And Lewis, got legitimately beaten, from George Russell, so that's how it is right now. But I think Lewis can come back next year and potentially recover, and I think he'd like to try to win the world championship at least one more time. So I think you're going to see Lewis Hamilton come back next year and be with a renewed focus, I guess, and try to be better than his teammate, but then also at least have the opportunity to challenge the likes of Leclerc and Verstappen for a Formula One title, which would be his 8th world title if he's able to do it in 2023. So yeah, I think Lewis still has the ability. I think it's just up to Mercedes to give him the car and also give him a good strategy to be able to pull off that achievement. And we've seen this year from Lewis, he's had opportunities, going throughout the year. Of course, Silverstone. Of course, while he didn't win that one, he was up there and made some pretty good moves at the end of the race to potentially get second, although it didn't happen. But he still made some pretty exciting moves there at the end of that race. Spa, was up front there for a bit until he ended up having to drop out of that race. But
he got in with Fish.
Yeah, with Verstappen, yes, and he's able to at least show that he still had a pulse leading up into that, but unfortunately ran into Verstappen and ended his race there. So there are still some points where Lewis had good moments throughout the year, but they weren't as many obviously as 2021 or 2020 or even before that. So we'll see next year if Lewis and George Russell can compete with Red Bull, but I think he knows that there's not a whole lot of time left. Knowing how some of his peers have now retired from Formula One, we've seen a lot of the guys that he raced with when he was, coming into his own as a Formula One driver are now retired or they lost their rides. Of course, Sebastian Vettel, who, he's close with off the track and everything, and someone who he greatly admires and respects, is now retired. And, he was one of the challengers for Lewis's titles for a few years, and when he was with Ferrari and with Red Bull. So I think Lewis was losing somebody on the grid that was able to provide a legitimate challenge to him, and he's people from his era are now up and gone except for Fernando Alonso somehow. But I think he is going to the last of his era of Formula One racers, and going to have to at least prove himself one more time against this, new generation, I guess, of Formula One drivers that have come up in the, last 4 or 5 years, and especially the last 2 or 3 years with guys like Leclerc and George Russell as teammates. So and of course Max Verstappen, who's been around for 2016 and everything, 2015. So it's actually been quite a while, but it doesn't feel that long for Verstappen. So, and he's still pretty young for a F1 driver in terms of his age. So Lewis, of course, getting closer to 40, so not getting any younger and everything. And of course, we've seen this year with the Formula One issues with their porpoising, and Lewis complaining of physical pain, back pain, and stuff like that throughout. Well, Russell did, but I know Lewis had also issues with that. So there's that too that they might have to deal with. But certainly, I think he still has the drive to compete and potentially get an 8th title.
Definitely see about that for sure. And hopefully, not just my bias aside, hopefully that can come to pass, because you can say that there's been at least 3 times in his career that championships have slipped out of his fingers that in theory weren't all on him. But, that's beside the point. You'd have 10 if that's the case, and then nobody could talk. But it is what it is. We'll see what happens in 2023 and the W14, what they can do with that car to make it worthwhile so that Lewis and George can compete not only for Drivers' Championship, race wins, poles, but also constructors. Next piece is the midfield. There's a lot going on there in the midfield. If we go and look at it, after the top 3 teams, Alpine gets 4th in the constructors over McLaren, largely because Alpine had 2 drivers that were competing basically the whole year versus 1 for McLaren. Daniel Ricciardo was basically non-existent for the last 2 years outside of winning the Italian Grand Prix and in 21. Other than that, his whole entire time at McLaren was a nightmare. He's going to be taking a year off, driving as some sort of like test driver. I don't even know. He's just going to be an overrated lackey for Red Bull next year, driving and doing show appearances and crap. But he's out of driving in Formula One, and I have a hard time believing he's going to get back into a seat. Fred Alonso and Esteban Ocon, the relationship dissolved, which is typical of Fred Alonso because he's an asshole and a douche who has a Napoleon complex and is jealous of Lewis Hamilton, and him and Max Verstappen probably blow each other. But the thing is, either way, he's now going over to go and blow Lawrence Stroll, and that'll work out really well for him. But Esteban Ocon will get to be with his quote, air quote, friend, Pierre Gasly, who had a terrible year this year with AlphaTauri, which we'll get to in a moment. But they'll do all French lineup, see what happens with that there next year. But the reliability for Renault was a major problem. It seems like that's been a case with this engine formula since 2014. Karen Horner buried them years ago, and that ended that relationship. So we'll see with that. McLaren will bring in Oscar Piastri. There was a lot of controversy with that during the summer between going to Alpine, where he was contracted to. Basically put Otmar Safnow got exposed for being the hack that he has been for years, and lost not only Piastri, but Fred Alonso in the process too, because of Sebastian Vettel's retirement. And so we'll see what happens there. Alfa Romeo tied with Aston Martin. Alfa Romeo scored a lot of their points earlier in this season. Aston Martin made a run late in the season, largely due to Vettel's work and energy, even though they gave him terrible strategy for the majority of the year. He did the job to get them there in a lot of ways, and Stroll was the beneficiary. In the end, and count back in best position, best finish in a race. Bottas had that earlier in the year, so Alpha Sauber get that position and the extra money that comes with it. Of course, Sauber announced that Audi will be buying into the team, and they'll be a power unit supplier and a whole bit, factory effort, 2026, which when you think about Peter Sauber, when he brought this team to Formula One, they were a Mercedes team with Ilmor engines way back when, and they were the Mercedes factory sports car team before that, where a certain M. Schumacher used to drive for that team. So going full circle in a sense, of course, with different German manufacturer. Then after that, Haas, if you ask the Europeans, or Haas, if you ask us in the United States, and AlphaTauri, Haas was able to get 8th by 2 points, and they finished last year because of Egghead and having a dumpster fire of a car. But this year, Kevin Magnussen got called in at the 13th hour or whatever, or 23rd hour, 19th or whatever the thing is, and he brought stability to the organization. He won the pole at the Brazilian Grand Prix, which was outstanding. He did a great job considering how inconsistent the car was. Yeah, he'd have some moments, he'd have some rough races, but he did what he had to do. And that team is still needing a little bit. They need more funding. They got a new sponsor in MoneyGram, and hopefully that'll help them. Mick Schumacher did make strides. He finally scored points in Formula One, but his huge crashes that he had at street course races, specifically Saudi and Monaco, were a blight on his career, and Haas decided to move on from him. They're going to pick up Nico Hülkenberg, who's getting yet another shot in Formula One, so going all veteran, and then Gunther Steiner, 2 years after going all rookie, is going all veteran, and saying, no, we didn't make a mistake by signing Egghead and Mick Schumacher, but you did make a mistake by signing Egghead and Mick Schumacher. If you don't have either of them there after 2 years after you signed them. But they get that 8th in constructors. AlphaTauri, one of their worst years since they started in Formula One, took over for the a minority team. And Pierre Gasly finally leaves Red Bull to go to Alpine. Yuki Tsunoda has a lot of pressure on him in his 3rd season, trying to compete now with Nick DeVries as his teammate. And will he ever get that call to go to Red Bull, or is he just going to go back and drive Super Formula? That's a question there. Williams was right dead last. Most of that work was done by Alex Albon. Alex Albon had a major health scare and still came back and was still better than freaking Nicholas Latifi, to the point where Nicholas Latifi was essentially canned at the U.S. Grand Prix for Logan Sargent, pending, of course, the super license points, and he did get those at Abu Dhabi. So Logan Sargent will be the first American driver since Scott Speed to run a full season in Formula One, and that was 2006. So 17 years ago. I guess, I don't know where you want to go on that, Josh. I went through all the rest of the teams, but I think the intriguing battle was Alpine and McLaren. That one was the one that lasted the whole year. The Alfa Aston Martin battle only came along late in the season. Haas had done work here and there, very inconsistent, and AlphaTauri, they missed the boat with their car, and they paid the price with it there.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of angles to take with that, and I think the most intriguing, like you said, was the McLaren and Alpine battle throughout the year. Of course, battled on the track and off the track, right? The Oscar Piastri or Oliver Piastri contract fiasco, because
Piastri,
supposed to go to Alpine, and then goes to McLaren. Zach Brown stealing him there, and of course Zach Brown stealing other drivers from in other series, right? But and they could also go to Formula One too, but they competed on the track as well. And I think for most of the year, I feel like Alpine was actually better than McLaren for a good bit, but Lando was doing a lot of the heavy lifting for McLaren. Esteban Ocon and Fernando Alonso, they both had their moments throughout the year as teammates, but they had issues towards the end of it, and of course had some issues mechanically throughout the year for both of their drivers at Alpine, and Fernando had a lot of mechanical issues throughout the year. So including the last race of the year, the water pump failing in Abu Dhabi. So unfortunate end of the partnership there with him and Alpine, but I think they were overall better as a team there than McLaren. Of course, Lando was carrying the flag, like I just said, and didn't have to really. He was competitive at multiple points of the season, but Ricardo just wasn't there throughout the entire year, and didn't really score points very very often, and if he did, he was always towards the back of the points grid. So for Ricardo, just a disappointing season for him. And even though he was the guy that actually won a race for McLaren, of course, last year at Monza, he's not the future at McLaren. Lando Norris is, and Norris has more potential as a driver than Ricardo. So unfortunate end to that partnership, and just could never find his pace, his groove, whatever you want to call it, throughout the year. It just seems like he was never comfortable with the car for whatever reason, and had issues being able to push the car throughout the year. So for Ricardo, not a great year at all, and definitely didn't help in the battle between Alpine and McLaren throughout the year. So I think those two teams were fairly competitive throughout the year, but I think I'm interested in how that works out next year, because Pierre Gasly is coming up to Alpine, and he's been a really good driver at AlphaTauri throughout the year and in the last couple of years, and he's somebody that I think has a lot of potential. So I think him and Esteban Ocon, of course, they were teammates and competitors going back to the karting days. So I think they should those two drivers should pair well, and be very friendly with one another. So I think that's going to be a good pairing, and we should see a lot of results going into next year. And I'd like to see next year Lando Norris potentially win a race. I think he has the potential. They almost had a chance in Russia last year, but ran out of the luck to be able to do that. And I think maybe next year he'll have an opportunity to potentially win a race. So that it should be interesting if he's able to finally win one. He's been on the grid now for 3 years, 4 years now. So Lando, he's a good driver, a young driver, but just hasn't been able to take that next step into being consistently competitive for McLaren, and being able to be somebody who's on that level, like Charles Leclerc or Max Verstappen. And I think as a team, McLaren has a long way to go in terms of pace. I think the other one that really intrigued me out of what you were talking about, with Haas, they actually won a pole with Kevin Magnussen in Brazil. So really a highlight of their year was being able to take advantage of the opportunity to get a pole. But outside of that, they had some success early on in the season, but at the end of the year, it was clear that they had a lot of inconsistencies throughout their team throughout the season that really held them back from really taking that next step as a team. Compared to last year, obviously it was a lot better, but at the same time, they had really a opportunity to be better, considering the changes to this car. I think this is one of the teams that, with the new regulations, I think they're on the lower end, of course, compared to, the rest of the sport, compared to giants like Red Bull and Mercedes. And this was supposed to help them equalize things, but, they just had inconsistent results throughout the year. And, with mechanical failures and just having a lack of pace. So, Magnussen, great job throughout the year. Mick Schumacher, not as much. Now he's going over to Ferrari to be a test driver, which may end up being better anyways. But at the same time, Mercedes, right? Mercedes, yeah. So I'm reading the. I said that Ferrari, and that's because I had the Ferrari wiki page up, and test drivers listed as Mick.
He was a part of the Ferrari Academy and left it.
Yeah, that's right. Right. Yeah. Now he's going to Mercedes, and yeah, that's my mistake there.
It's all good.
Yeah, but yeah, that's a lot of the interest, and of course next year for some of these teams like Aston Martin, they're getting Fernando Alonso for a bit, and he's going to be paired with Lance Stroll, which wonder if that's going to be his final stop before he calls it a career. We'll see. Replacing Sebastian Vettel, but not sure how their pace is going to be for 2023, but it should be interesting, and maybe they might be semi-competitive for the points. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, this rest of the grid, we'll see what happens, but I think, the focus, I think, like to see McLaren be more competitive, and I think Alpine can be a lot more competitive. So, yeah, I think each of these teams had their moments throughout the year, both good and bad, and you saw some of it. Fernando Alonso was competitive throughout the year, qualified really well at some racetracks, of course. Qualified in I'm pulling up his chart. Qualified second in Canada.
In Montreal.
Yeah, in Canada. I was going to say he qualified in the pole, but I know he didn't do that. But he qualified second in Montreal and was fairly competitive there. So some of these these old guys still has the pace. Of course, he might be a jerk, but still has the ability to compete. So think we'll see how he does next year at his new job at Aston Martin. But yeah, interesting year I think from the rest of the grid. And we'll see where they end up next year.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there are amount of changes. We, of course, losing Sebastian Vettel to retirement. One of the great drivers, 4-time world champion, 53 wins, a good amount of poles. So third all-time in wins in Formula One history. 4 world championships has him tied with Alain Prost. He's behind only 3 men, one of them being his mentor in Michael Schumacher, of course, Lewis, who was essentially they came in around the same time as Josh mentioned, and then Juan Manuel Fangio. So who drove for 2 of those guys, of course, drove for Ferrari, just like Sebastian Vettel. He won those 4 championships in a row for Red Bull. And now it kind of seems like that's the pattern we're seeing now, all these years later with fish lips. We'll see if that actually does stick. I mean, we had a mention of changes at Williams, of course. Logan Sargent will be coming in, and then the Hulkenberg for Haas. Then mention Aston Martin, the other rookie, so Sargent and Nick DeVries will be a rookie with AlphaTauri and Oscar Piastri at McLaren. So it'll be the 3 rookies next year. No changes in the top 3 teams in the championship. The all-French lineup at Alpine, Alfa Romeo, Sauber stays the same. And then I think that is what's up there. Mick Schumacher, of course. We mentioned also that he'll be Mercedes test driver, so it'll be interesting to see how that all works out for the W. He can do different organization after being a part of Ferrari's driver development program for many years. And maybe he can take that step forward that he really wants to. The big news from last week was all the changes with team principals. Mattia Binotto leaving after many years at Ferrari. Then Joe Scapito leaves Williams, and then their technical director also left, so they're having to replace 2 major people. This is crazy. Fred Vasseur, as I mentioned earlier, goes from Sauber to Ferrari. Andreas Seidel returns to Sauber from McLaren, leaves McLaren to go to Sauber to be a big part of the Audi deal getting off the ground. And then Andreas Stella gets promoted at McLaren to team principals. So a lot going on in there in that sense. I mean, Seidel was part of Porsche's sports car program, the 919 LMP, and then also their, of course, 911 GT program. And so that's a interesting move. And then And so they still need a team principal, but I said he was a team principal, but Seidel's going in as a CEO, so he's going to be above that. So that's you get a promotion in that sense, so that's good. And then Seidel will complete his contract until 25, move to Audi. Seidel was keen to move back to Conrad. Then Ferrari, so it all kind of exploded because of all this movement. And then Williams, Reed, that one is the one because of considering how things are. Of course, no point. You're getting only 8 points. That's not enough. And trying to go and make changes. High turnover. Is that yeah. So that's something. The issues technical wise are something you have to look at. They're going to have to hire 2 main people, so it's going to be a struggle, and it might be a real struggle for Logan Sargent next year. I mean, Alex Albon did what he could, and he did all right considering the circumstances there. Audi, of course, committed. Honda also committed to the new formula for 2026. It sounds like Red Bull is going to be making their own engine in 2026 power unit. So there's all those pieces are there. Of course, Mercedes, Ferrari, Alpine, and Renault, I think, are also in playing a part in that. So we'll see what happens with power unit. There were rumors Ford might be coming back in some capacity to possibly connect with Red Bull in a badging deal, but that'll be to be determined. They've been busy, Ford. We'll get into that in the roundup. But yeah, so plenty of that in Formula One. And I'll mention one other thing because I mentioned that ban personal and political statements because they're trying to turn it into a dictatorship, just like it was in a sense with the troll, but to a higher extent. It's almost like we call them the Lewis Hamilton rules. Some of these rules that they're putting into place. I'm buffering here. It looks like I'm freezing. But to go and close some of these things, that might help. You can close that. So yeah, I got there was the F1 Academy for women. They announced the teams that will be involved in that for more race series. Yeah, Formula One go. So that was definitely then again that. Trying to go and scroll through, find that over there. It's not there. Go and switch that up, see if I can find it here, and try to get that over. Trying to figure out those teams. I know. I mean, I know a couple of the teams, but I don't remember all of them. Dang it. Let's go and look that up. Give me a second here, of course. F1 Academy teams. Yeah. 5 teams for the first 3 seasons. It's going to be based on the F4, on an F4 platform. So that'll be a baseline. ART, Grand Prix, Campos Racing, Carlin, MP Motorsport, and Prema are all involved. Carlin, of course, Trevor Carlin's been here in the United States recently with IndyCar, but has a great history in the Formula One feeder system. MP Motorsports won the F2 championship with Felipe Drogovic. ART won F3 with Victor Martins this year. Prema won the team's title, and Carlin ran in F2, and that's where Logan Sargent won Rookie of the Year and was able to advance. So all those teams are really solid. They're strong teams. 5 all teams would be between 15 cars. Yeah, so a lot of stuff to look forward to there. I don't know if you're saying that it's essentially a replacement to W Series, but it kind of seems like it is because we haven't really heard anything about the W Series ever since they stopped up the season abruptly. So let's move forward into the roundup. So first piece of news in the roundup will be the WEC and IMSA lineups for Porsche. Of course, it'll lead into another piece for would be driving the exact pairing lines. Yeah. So that was announced a couple, like 4 days ago. So in the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, Nick Tandy and Matthew Jaminet will be driving the number 6 car, the number 6 963. And Jaminet drove in GTD Pro in the FAF Motorsports Porsche with Matt Campbell. Matt Campbell will be in the number 7 with Felipe Nasr. So that'll be the 4 drivers. Nick Tandy comes back from Chevy to come back to prototypes. Dane Cameron will be the endurance driver in the 6 car, and Michael Christensen will be in the 7 car. And so those 2 drivers, both Dane Cameron and Michael Christensen, will be in the number 5 in the WEC with Fred Makowicki. And then the second WEC car, the number 6, will be run by Kevin Estra, Andre Lauderer, and Lawrence Vantor. And so that's Jimmy Bruni, Romain Dumas, Richard Leitz, Thomas Preining, to be determined. Probably going to do a lot of GT racing, whether it's here in the United States or in WEC, to be determined. Of course, they only have, in the WEC, they only have GTM there's no the GTE Pro category is gone. The GTM category is around for 1 more year, and then they're going to go to a GT3 formula similar to what we have here in the IMSA Championship. And then also there's customer programs. JDC Miller is going to be waiting. They had a story out today on Racer. They'll be waiting a while, probably until they're hoping to get them at Sebring, get their car at Sebring, but maybe longer. Joda Sport and Proton Competition will be running in WEC. So those will be the 3 customer programs for Porsche in those 2 in both IMSA and WEC. Then do some NASCAR news. A few things have come up here recently. Announcements for some drivers and some teams. Got some sponsorship stuff. And VRR, you got that. Lance McGrew retired, 23 years around. He was around for 23 years at Hendrick Motorsports. So he had be crew chief for Dale Jr. most famously, and that didn't work out so well for him.
Yeah, he sucked.
I mean, that's a thankless job to be Dale Jr.'s crew chief. Back in the day, really. There's been announcement. There's like a German team that's trying to get into NASCAR. It sounds like the Henzemans team, honestly. We'll see if they ever show up or get there. And then in Xfinity, they have just announced or just put up here earlier today, Josh Williams is going to return to DGM Racing, drive for Mario Goslin, where that team he's had the most success with in Xfinity, had more success, of course, ARCA years ago. Alpha Prime is going to run 2 of their full-time drivers next year will be Jeffrey Earnhardt, will be in the number 44, and they'll field a number 43. Of course, they have 44 and 45. Number 43 will have Ryan Ellis as the anchor driver of that program for 24 races. So Ryan Ellis, who's been a PR guy for different drivers, he's kind of been all over the place, will get back into a race car for the majority of the season. So Alpha Prime making some moves with their driver program, and we'll see what Jeffrey can do. Probably the most competitive full-time effort he's had in his career, the type of cars and the team and the support he has there. He's been in a lot of smaller, lower-tier rides over his career, and of course people have judged him whether fairly or unfairly based on a lot of those rides. But then we saw what he did in an RCR car with Larry McReynolds at Talladega earlier this year. Maybe he has something. I mentioned that other D-bag Moffitt last week. In the truck series, the big big news was ThorSport goes back to Ford, and in turn, Haley Deegan will be the driver of the 98 truck, taking over for Christian Eckes, who moved over to the McAnally team. And that's where Eckes goes to McAnally with Jake Garcia. So that was the move that he made, because he knew that he was going to lose his ride and he didn't really have sponsorship. She'll join, of course, Matt Crafton, who's been with ThorSport forever, 23 years. Ben Rhodes, the 2021 champion, Crafton 3-time series champion, and then Ty Majeski, who made the Final Four last year as teammates. So we'll see what she can do. Really doesn't have an excuse equipment-wise, and she doesn't have an excuse experience-wise. I think she has Rich Lucius as her crew chief as well. I think they're moving Lucius over to work with her, so can't go and she has no excuses anymore, honestly. And I will give her credit. She didn't do bad in that Xfinity ride. The one race she had in the Xfinity car did better than Joe Graff Jr. does in that car. But that isn't saying much, to be fair. Going into in the Supercars Championship, the big news was the fact that I'll go here. The F1 Academy, I already did that, so I don't have to worry about that. Pick that up. The Supercars was the news of the Repco Supercars Championship. There you go. Is the news that Coca-Cola will be the sponsor of Erebus Racing in 2023. They'll be they're going to rename the team. So it's Coca-Cola Euro-Pacific Partners. So Coca-Cola Racing banner. They've been Boost Mobile Racing for the last year. So Penrite, Boost Mobile. So now they're going to be a part of the Coca-Cola program. So obviously we'll see some really cool schemes on their Chevy Camaros next year with the new Gen 3 project, which will see new Chevy Camaros and Ford Mustangs out on the grid. More Ford teams this coming year too, so that'll be nice to see as well. With Walkinshaw Andretti United joining Ford, and then you have, of course, Tickford Racing and DJR, who's gotten more investment from different owners. So the Ford program looking to get a little stronger after what has been 2 years, 2 years with Shane Van Gisbergen dominating. And so we'll see what happens with that. Go to WRC, the announcements of the drivers for WRC for next year. For next year. Announcement was Tanak, the former world champion, will go back to Ford with Pierre-Louis Loubet for the M Sport Ford team. So Tanak and Loubet will be the two full-time drivers. So that'll be interesting to see. He'll be getting Thierry Neuville's former co-driver there, and then filling the seat. His former co-driver will work with Sebastian Ogier at Toyota. Going into the other drivers, so right now, and they have a third car that they think they're going to be, that maybe Sebastian Loeb will be in, but to be determined. Loeb, sir, I don't know who that guy is, but I've never heard of that guy. For Jordan Sertoritis or something. I don't know who the fuck he is, but he's a Greek privateer, so they'll be taking that third factory seat for fourth following appearance. Long time around 4. So he'll be in 5 races or 5 rallies. So we'll see what happens if Sebastian Loeb, who did win Rally Monte Carlo last year in the Ford Puma, will end up being on the grid. Of course, he's running the Dakar Rally here starting at the end of the month here on the 31st and trying to win that race after all the world championships he's won in World Rally. And defending world champion Kalle Rovanperä returns to Toyota. Elfyn Evans was there. And then Takamoto Katsuda is going to be the full season factory driver. Sebastian Ogier is going to run a partial season. In Hyundai, Neuville stays, of course. Esa-Pekka Lappi leaves Toyota to come back to Hyundai. Danny Sordo stays and will share the ride with Craig Breen, who was at Ford, goes to Hyundai. So that's the drivers for the World Rally Championship, at least in Rally 1, a category. And we'll see how that goes with Rally Monte Carlo coming up in a few weeks' time, really. The NHRA, big news in recent weeks or recent days, has seen the two big powerhouses, the KB Racing, which is essentially now run by Greg Anderson, and Titan Racing, which is has long time been involved in Pro Mod. They are joining forces to become KB Titan Racing, and now they're going to be a 4-car team because 2022 Rookie of the Year Camry Caruso is going to move over to that team to be a fourth driver to join, of course, Greg Anderson and forgetting who the other guys were there. It's my fault. I'm blanking here on the drivers. It was Kyle Koretsky and Dallas Glenn. There you go. Kyle Koretsky, Dallas Glenn, Greg Anderson, and now Camry Caruso will be joining the team next year. So that's a big team to go after the elite motorsports team that has been dominant here in recent years with Enders winning. So trying to go and beat her. They'll have, of course, Troy Coughlin Jr. Back, or I think that, for Troy Coughlin Jr., yeah. So he'll be back next year to drive as a teammate. 2 wins this year, so making progress for sure. Going through that, let's scroll through. Yeah, John Force announced he's staying with Chevy, so no surprise there. Was with Ford, now with Chevy. He's run GM products for many, many years, so not surprising by any stretch. Methanol Moonshine gets a new body. What the heck car is that? I've never even heard of that. Methanol Moonshine. That's a new team. Okay. Yeah, that's why Buddy Hull. Okay. Oh, that'll be something to look at. Top Fuel car. Elite Motorsports. Yeah, Jerry Tucker will be a part of that effort in 2020 as well. The 8th Pro Stock Machine will join a stack roster because, Bo Butner also is there in the actual team. So there'll be a 4-car full effort in that sense. But then Aaron Stanfield, who contended for the championship for a good part of the year, is a part of Elite with the Quadra family. So that'll be interesting. So Elite essentially has a 4-car team too. So it's kind of going the same way as the funny car was with John Force versus Don Schumacher back for many years. Gag, yeah, so she got a new Mountain Motor Pro Stock. So she'll be driving doubling up there, trying to go and win Mountain Motor Championship. And then the other piece of news I saw is that Alex Laughlin, who's ran in Pro Stock and in Top Fuel in recent years, is going to take the Haviland sponsorship to... Yeah, we get Laughlin crossover. Yeah, we'll be moving to Jim Dunn's funny car program. So that's awesome news. Getting a driver, a competitive driver. So that is a true granddaughter. Yeah, so he's got one of the coolest cars out there, and he'll be in the Haviland Dodge. I think I believe they're a Dodge program. Yeah, so they'll. For the first time in a while, I think the Jim Dunn team has a chance to compete. So we'll see what they can do in funny cars next year after many years with Jim Campbell doing not much of anything. IndyCar announced that was the iRacing thing. We definitely talked about. They had the hybrid partnership. Bobby Schwartzman is getting in Ganassi test and is possibly in line to join in 2024. The Joseph Newgarden has Eric Lichtel replacing Gavin Ward, who moved to Arrow McLaren, or now whatever McLaren, Arrow McLaren SP is Arrow McLaren. And then Newgarden will also have race engineer Luke Mason. So that'll be there's all new people on board for the guy who won the most races last year, but Newgarden is able to deal with all that. He's trying to win that elusive third title, but also win the Indianapolis 500, which I think means more. A lot of news, of course, in WeatherTech, Sports Car Championship. Parker Thompson is going to join Vassar Sullivan for Enduros. Era Motorsports and LMP2 won the championship last year. They're going to have Christian Rasmussen, Indy Pro 2000, USF 2000 champion, and Oliver Jarvis for the Rolex 24. And then, so that'll be a good team for sure, or second, I'm sorry. They finished second in LMP2 championship last year. Full field, they announced 60 cars for the Rolex. Of course, they used to have more back in the day, but I think they're maximizing pit road space there. So 60 cars right now. They had over 70 entries, more than 70 entries. So 60 car field, 56 committed for the Michelin Endurance Cup, 45 for the full season, which is outstanding. So we'll see what happens with the field itself. Hardwick, Hale, and Robichon for Wright Motorsports Michelin Endurance Cup. Sean Creech with Wilsley and Barbosa, LMP3. Seb Prio and PJ Hyatt will be driving in GTD for AO Racing, run by Gunnar Jeanette. So, and Multimatic, so that'll be a interesting partnership in the GTD category. WeatherTech Racing is going to run with two Mercedes factory drivers in GTD Pro with Jules Gugnon and Daniel Juncadella, and with Mauro Engel joining them for the Enduros, and Cooper McNeil's getting out of the seat outside of the Rolex 24 to go and focus on business. Of course, WeatherTech is the sponsor of the championship. WeatherTech is a company, of course, out of Colorado, and so we'll see what happens with there. Inception Racing, I think we talked about it last week, where their McLaren's going to be out there full time. Kurtz will move to LMP2. That's CrowdStrike Racing, George Kurtz, Ben Hanley, and Mac McMurray. So with the Algarve Pro Racing team, the Michelin Endurance Cup rounds. So what is it? So the four big races there. So that'll be an interesting combination. We'll see how that goes. He has solid drivers with him, so we'll see what that. And LMP2 has a chance to win the Rolex this year because of all the issues in reliability. Okay, yeah, and Sebastian Vettel, Mick Schumacher will be Team Germany for the Race of Champions. And the last piece of the roundup, I'm forgetting that. The roundup is NBC Sports and Peacock and the Super Motocross League. They have 31 races all between both Supercross and Pro Motocross. Will be on Peacock exclusively, but they'll have some races on the family of networks over the season. But Peacock's going to be the exclusive home of Supercross and Motocross here in 2023. So if you don't have that, you probably want to get it. It's like $5 a month, but you can get the Supercross and Motocross. You can also get IndyCar. You have IMSA. So there's a lot that you can gain out of doing that. Most of the Rolex will be on there too. So, there's IndyCar races. I mean, like the race in Toronto is exclusively on Peacock. So I think it's worth the deal there. All right. So that's a lot of talking from me. With that, I'll hand it over to you, Josh, for the sim segment here. The last segment, or next to last segment for season 3 in 2022.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, we already really went through a big chunk of it, at the top of the show with the deal with IndyCar and iRacing, the controversy that it's become, so unfortunate that it has to happen like that. But that aside, I'll bring up a couple more points from that I just want to bring up. But let me talk about the other stuff on iRacing that I'm trying to do or have been doing, and mostly right now I've been focusing on road racing, trying to get better at that, trying to be better at road racing so that I can expand my interests in iRacing and stuff like that. And I want to try to break in my new pedals that I got recently, and road racing. Obviously, I have a lot of braking, a lot of off throttle time, and a lot of variance in driving. So that's kind of where I've been focusing on. Like to do some more short track racing as well, to get more experience, with better braking technique as well. So I'll try to look out for that this week, or when I come back from winter break and everything like that. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I did do some mostly Ferrari 488 GT3 racing this weekend, or this past weekend, at VIR, and I learned VIR is a very tough track to race on. It's very lengthy, but it's got very low speed corners. So it's a track that takes a lot of finesse and a lot of parts of the track to really be able to put up fast times. Had a lot of off tracks while I raced, trying to figure out the line to run at VIR. But it's a good track to run on, and I look forward to more events like that in the future. I think this week on iRacing, besides trying to run, Indianapolis for the last time in an IndyCar, I'm probably looking forward, doing some, stock car stuff as well. Let me see, trying to get some stuff on there, some short track racing. So the 87 car will be racing at the USA International Speedway, of course, which is no longer in existence in actual reality, but it still exists on iRacing. That's a good short track, one of the tracks that comes with the base package of iRacing when you download it. NASCAR Cup is at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, so maybe have an opportunity to race the Indianapolis Motor Speedway there on Cup if I decide to, with the Cup car. The IndyCar series, of course, is also at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, so that's always an opportunity. The Winter Heat Racing Series on iRacing races at Homestead this week. Fixed setup races at Homestead as well for the Winter Heat. That's the basically long form 87 series there. iRacing Xfinity Series races at Texas. So probably won't do that one because we know Texas Motor Speedway is pretty garbage, even in the sim. So probably just let that one go. Don't really enjoy racing Texas Motor Speedway. ARCA at Charlotte, of course. Trucks at Talladega, that might be interesting as well. Road course racing, of course. Like I mentioned, VIR for the Ferrari GT3 Challenge. Global Mazda MX-5 Cup. Rudskogen Motor Center. That's another new track at iRacing that they released the last couple of weeks. Road America, the Indy Pro 2000 Road America, that might be interesting to run on that track with lower form of open wheel racing. Let's see what else that I have that I can race. Trying to look at, just bring up potential eligible and owned content. GT4 at Road Atlanta, Formula IR04 at Long Beach. If I want to race the Open IndyCar Series, that's at Auto Club, so there's that opportunity. USF 2000s at Road America, that's another similar to the Indy Pro 2000. That's pretty similar track there. Yeah, let's see. Lotus 79 at WeatherTech International, or at Laguna Seca IMSA Endurance Series. So that's the new endurance class and I can race that one at Watkins Glen. The boot might be interesting if I have time. I don't know. The production car SimLab challenge, that's at Landmark Park. New Toyota GR86 is in that one. Should be interesting, along with the updated Ford Mustang FR500 on the roadside. So, Formula V at Tsukuba Circuit and GR86 at Okayama International Circuit. So there should be a good one there. So probably doing a lot of Indianapolis, honestly, while I have the time. Probably do some later tonight before hit the hay. So, Indianapolis, of course, the controversy with all that. Very disappointing news, as I said. And, while, you're going on the roundup and everything, I was looking up some stuff with Motorsport Games, the game company that IndyCar has signed the exclusive deal. This is the same company that released NASCAR 2021 Ignition, and by all accounts, that game was a massive failure. It was broken out of the box. A lot of issues, should not have been released. And clearly the people that were developing it knew that it was broken, and apparently, just as a fact that has been said in the in the news when that was released, apparently the developers said that the wheels couldn't even turn, so car wheels in the game could not even turn until 2 weeks before the release. So that was pretty bad, and this company is in a lot of financial trouble. They went public on the NASDAQ the beginning of last year in January. Their opening price was $300. They're now down to a share price of $3.03. They've been out of compliance with the NASDAQ regarding minimum bid price on their stock, and as they were trading below $1 for a long time, and then they recently had to do a 10-to-1 reverse split stock to raise capital so that they were in compliance again with that. So very, very clearly they have had some bad financials, which shows how bad of a company they are. Of course, it seems like it's a huge scam of a company, as I've been saying, and they've clearly seems like taken a lot of money and done nothing with things, and clearly made broken products. And so if they were to make an IndyCar game, if it ever comes out, I don't expect it to be well, even if they own the license and the physics or license for R Factor 2. Don't expect anything good to come out of this. So very, very unfortunate that this has to happen, and we see iRacing on IndyCar come to an end. Basically, I mean, it's still going to be there. Race it, but essentially it's killed the community, and people no longer being able to broadcast it officially. So there's a lot of people that spend a lot of their money and time on this, and there's a lot of growth in terms of streaming content, esports content with iRacing and IndyCar, and especially in the last couple of years with Corona and everything. So just unfortunate, as we talked about earlier. So, and just incredible that they're going with a company that has proven to be a fraudulent company, and by all means. So, can't say anything more than that. But it's just unfortunate. So, of course, before we recorded, was streaming on iRacing. I was racing with Connor Daly and Tony Kanaan. Was drafting off of Tony Kanaan, trying to learn his driving technique. He's an Indy 500 champion. I'm an Indy 500 champion in iRacing. So, it was good to race on there with him. Of course, there's other Indy 500 champions on iRacing probably that were on there too. That was pretty good, even though it was for fun and everything. And try to go 3 wide with Connor Daly and somebody else going into turn 1 in Indianapolis. So it's pretty funny how that turned out. So, of course, you can see that, and I think Phil was on the stream on there, making first appearance. I guess not by accident, but don't think it matters really. But being on there and everything. You can look at the stream, Twitch TV/usailor2, and go see the stream where I decided to stream racing with Connor Daly and Tony Kanaan and other people on iRacing. Earlier today, Wednesday, not July, that was a long time ago, December 21, 2022. So go in there and watch all that stuff and see my Indy 500 win, which will no longer be possible for the time being from this year in 2022, which I have there clipped. It'll be there forever. I think I will try to put it on YouTube at some point so that I can share it better because, sometimes Twitch, you can watch the Twitch clip, but, YouTube is easier to, view things on YouTube and, share things beyond Twitch. So, go on there and follow that Twitch TV/usailor2. Go on there and see all my racing streams when I have it on and everything like that. And of course, follow me, JP Huffline, Twitter, where retweeted a lot of the reaction to iRacing, of course. Follow all my Jaguars content. I mean, I don't make content, but I share, opinions, my own opinions. Big time players make big time plays in big time games. So that happened on Sunday with Rayshon Jenkins taking the pick 6 for the Jags to win the game against the Cowboys. So you can see all my takes on there. Racing takes, of course, went, right now off season, so they're not really a whole lot. But, in season and any type of news that I'm reacting to, of course, iRacing IndyCar, that is racing content. So, on there as well. And then, of course, talk about finance, stock market, all that stuff. I have information on that as well if you want to look at there, gain information, learn stuff on there too. So, of course, been a great year talking, with the podcast and everything. Look forward to coming back next year and continuing to do this and do more stuff on the show. So, we had a lot of good things come out of it this year. YouTube, the free tickets to the races that we had, which we were able to take advantage of, being able to link up with Joe, link up with Phil Spain on that at the beginning of the year. Got to be able to meet Joe and everything. So glad to be able to do that. So of course, glad to be able to do it with you as always, Phil, and close it out and everything. And hope everybody has a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year and everything like that. So, we'll close the year out and we'll come back next year and continue on.
Absolutely. Season 4 will be starting next year. So it's amazing to think something that started at the peak of pandemic has now gone 3 years, and now we're going to get into year 4. I'm glad that you're with me, Josh, and we were able to do this. Had fun for 149 episodes. The next episode will be episode 150, so a milestone number there. So it'll be huge for that as we come back, trying to get some more guests, trying to get some more things moving. But enjoy this show. We'll have plenty and enjoy doing it. It's a passion project for sure. Hoping for it to grow and continue to make more strides. Thanks to Josh, of course, being my sidekick, right-hand man, Indy 500 champion, Josh Huffine. So we might be talking about his Jacksonville Jaguars in the playoffs in 2 weeks when we come back for episode 150. Kind of hoping for that personally. It'd be cool. But Niners are going to be there. Where they're going to be in position, we'll see. You can find me with some of the social media stuff if I'm talking about the Niners on Twitter at Philip G. Matthew, probably looking at alternatives for that during this break. We could put the Grip Strip over there as well. We're at Grip Strip Pod on Twitter as well. And we're on basically anywhere you can find podcasts. We're on my website, philipgmatthew.com, and YouTube. Josh runs that. So we're basically anywhere. You can watch us. You can listen to us. There's all kinds of ways, and hopefully a lot to talk about after the holidays. And we'll have a winner of the FallBrawl League. Hopefully it's one of us. I have not sent the ring or the belt out for the last 2 years because Vic took a picture with the belt and the ring last year, but didn't decide to take it. And then Joe won it the first year, but because he has 2 young kids, there's no effing way I was going to send it. I have a hard time believing I would send it if Wilson wins it because his kids are young. too, but we'll see. But if it stays in my house, it'll be good. And I know Josh will take care of those. He'll probably do the gimmick like how Pat McAfee and AJ Hawk with the little WWE belts or whatever, but we'll see what happens with that. We thank you for listening to Grip Strip Podcast and supporting us, liking, subscribing the whole bit. And Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, all that. Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, get that all in there. And for Josh, I'm Phil, and we'll see you in 2023. Take care.